these for measurements. We should be.
All right, we're going to call this meeting to order. Good evening. We are here to discuss a zoning application ZON-22-10, which is the Black Opal Properties LLC located on Lewis Center Road, approximately 40 acres. Robin, do you want to call roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Powitz?
Here.
Mr. McNulty?
Here.
Mr. Bellis?
Here.
Mr. Pierce?
Here.
Ms. Harris?
All right. Robin, do you mind running through the staff report first, and we'll just go from there?
Absolutely. So this is a rezoning case ZON-22-10. The applicant is Black Opal Properties LLC. They are requesting to rezone 4 parcels totaling 40.664 acres from a farm residential district, or FR1, to a multi-family planned residential district, MFPRD, for the use of a single-family cluster housing community with 158 cluster homes. The 4 subject parcels, total roughly 40 acres, are located at the southwest corner of the roundabout at Lewis Center Road and North Road. The Green Meadows Drive extension is east of the proposed development that would connect with the roundabout at Lewis Center and North Road to create that intersection there and would serve as the primary access for this development. Property is surrounded on all 4 sides by residential districts, either farm residential districts and vacant land, or single-family planned residential districts in the woods at Weeping Willow Rock, Slate Ridge single-family planned residential district, Old Lewis Center Village, and the Evans Farm property, which is not too far away. The 2018 Comprehensive Land Use Plan, planning orange. The subject properties are located within sub-areas 9 and 13 in the Comprehensive Land Use Plan. The proposed land use map labels part of the site as single-family residential and the other part as single and double-family residential. In terms of permitted and prohibited uses, they are proposing 162 total lots, 4 lots fronting Lewis Center Road with larger acreage, and 158 cluster homes along Green Meadows Drive. This comes out to a total density of 3.98 dwelling units per acre, which does meet the 4 dwelling unit per acre requirement under the multifamily planned residential district zoning classification. The proposed MFPRD would not permit non-residential uses other than the potential recreational facilities, which would be ancillary to this development. All recreational uses should maintain a 100-foot setback to all exterior development boundaries. In terms of uses, the applicant has also requested that a sales or rental office, which is normally a conditionally permitted use, be classified as a permitted use in this district. They are requesting a divergence for this change. In terms of staff comments for uses, staff does request clarification from the applicant regarding the 4 proposed lots that front on Lewis Center Road, as correspondence from the Delaware County Engineer's Office indicates that those lots cannot be developed as part of this subdivision. We would just like some clarification from the applicant as to the mechanics of how and when that would happen. In terms of development standards, structure separation is proposed to have a minimum separation of 12 feet from one principal structure to another principal structure. There are varying lot widths between the lots. They are not proper lots, but they will be condominium lots. 7 units at 32 feet, 38 units at 36 feet, 20 units at 43 feet, and 30 units at 46 feet. We do have a staff comment within our staff report that we recommended, including standards for lot depth and lot coverage. That is an error on our part because this will be a condominium style development. There will not be fee simple lots that require those standards. However, we do still recommend including a minimum square footage for single family dwellings, as the development text that we received prior to this meeting specified that the square footage was for multifamily units and not for single family. I believe the applicant has a plan to address that as well. In terms of architectural elements, proposed development text notes that cementitious siding, smart siding, brick veneer, vinyl, stone, and stone veneer shall be permitted as primary exterior facade materials. Permitted trim materials include wood, PVC, vinyl, cementitious trim, and aluminum. Accessory improvements such as patios, decks, and privacy fencing would also be permitted for each dwelling unit. And in terms of staff comments for architectural elements, we do recommend that building facades facing Green Meadows Drive should include more and higher quality architectural features as they front that road. Total open space proposed is 12.22 acres or 30.05%. That does exceed the minimum requirement, which would be 8.133 acres. No lighting plan was submitted. Applicant notes within the development text that all lighting within the district will comply with the requirements and standards within the zoning resolution. Lighting details would be provided with the future zoning permit request, as building details and specifics are not available at this time. In terms of parking, both off-street parking options are offered as well as on-street parking. There are 89 on-street parking spaces proposed. The required off-street spaces for multifamily planned residential parking is 3 spaces per dwelling unit. Proposed internal streets are to be 26 feet in pavement, with parking limited to one side of the street. The on-street parking is labeled at 8 feet in width, leaving 18 feet remaining on the internal street. Our staff comment in terms of parking, we've seen this in similar developments, but we recommend the consideration of no parking signs to be installed on the same side of the street as any fire hydrants that go in. In terms of signage, I believe the applicant is proposing 2 monument signs. They did provide some exhibits of signs for other developments. We would request a more detailed signage plan specific to this development with renderings and exact locations of the proposed monument signs. 2 full access points are proposed from the Green Meadows Drive extension to the 158 cluster homes. Internal circuitry is proposed as private streets, and there are sidewalks and walking paths interior to the development as well. The applicant is requesting a total of 4 divergences. The first one from section 11.03A, permitted uses, to permit residential structures with 1 dwelling unit per structure in the multifamily planned residential district. The second, also 11.03A for permitted uses, to permit a sales office or a rental office within a permanent structure, such as a clubhouse or community building. The sales office shall comply with all standards set forth within section 11.04B and or section 11.04C, which lays out the standards and requirements traditionally used for the conditional use for the sales or rental office. Another divergence from section 11.07B, maximum units on any single acre, to increase the maximum density for a single acre from 8 dwellings to 12 dwellings per acre, and requesting a divergence from section 21.03 for structure separation to reduce the minimum separation of principal structures to 12 feet from another principal structure. In terms of additional staff comments, we did observe 1 typo on page 26 of the development text, which I believe the applicant has now rectified. We also recommend that front yard setbacks from the edge of pavement be included, and I believe the applicant has a plan for that as well. We do request the same setback for structure separation for side yards and corner lots as well. We do also recommend that additional screening be put in along both Green Meadows Drive and the southern property line, because we do not, as of yet, know what the property to the south will look like. Technical agencies reviews. The fire department has conditionally approved the site layout. They do have some questions about the timeline of the construction and how that will work with the Green Meadows Drive and how the site will be accessed during that time. The Orange Township Operations Department is a little concerned about the lack of amenities within the development, aside from the clubhouse and pool. They do like to see open space be activated with some kind of active recreation in particular when a new developer comes into the community. They also request that the applicant connect the path along Green Meadows Drive to the existing stub at the roundabout for North Road and Lewis Center Road, just looking at our trail connectivity, big picture and long term. The Delaware County Regional Planning Commission did recommend conditional approval of this rezoning request, subject to 5 conditions. The first being given numerous divergences, lack of buffering along the southern border, and transferring development from large frontage lots. Their staff recommended reducing the size of those frontage lots on Lewis Center Road and applying the allowable 4 units per acre to the area being developed with the condominium product. They also recommended that a lighting plan be submitted as well as a detailed signage plan. 3, continued discussion with the county engineer's office regarding the responsibility for the extension of Green Meadows Drive, providing additional setback and landscaping along the southern perimeter of the site, and the 4 lots fronting Lewis Center Road must be divided prior to the plat, which will create the lot and dedicate Green Meadows Drive. I have nothing further for the staff report. I believe the applicant has a presentation, and I'm here to answer any questions that the commission may have as well.
All right, thank you, Robin. Just to give a brief overview of tonight's meeting. So we, at this time, we're going to open up the discussion to the applicant. They're going to speak on the development. Then we will have the board respond to those or ask questions and have a dialogue with the applicant. And then after that, we will open it up to public comment. Anybody wishing to speak tonight, please state your name and address prior to making your statement. And then the applicant will respond to any comments at the end of when we close the public comment. So it's not going to be an open dialogue the entire time. All right, so this time we'll open it up for the applicant to go through the presentation and possibly touch on a few of the comments made by staff.
Thank you. My name is Jake Dietrich, Vice President of Development and Acquisitions for Onyx and East, here to just set the table for other team members that are going to speak more about the project tonight. So Annie Richardson to my right is on our development team. She'll be speaking more about the plans that we've submitted. Eric Zortman is legal counsel for us, and then Kevin Kirshner sitting behind us is civil engineer. So just to introduce for you Onyx and East, because we're a new builder to Orange Township. So we are a company that's headquartered in Indianapolis, and these are some images of some buildings and products that we have built in the Indianapolis market, which just shows kind of that we're, if you can go back, sorry, I'm going to let Andy speak to the plan. We're a builder that builds a variety of products from single family homes to townhomes, and what we're proposing tonight is a single family product, but it's actually a single family product that's built specifically for the purposes of renting. And so these are detached 3 to 4 bedroom homes that will all be a part of a condominium association, so that there are protections in place to ensure maintenance, and it's going to be professionally managed, no different than an apartment community would be or a condominium community would be. But they will all be rented to individuals. And so this is a structure that we are doing as of this year. We recently had a project approved in Berlin Township of a similar scope. And so we're just asking for, or we're here to answer any questions you might have about that product type if you do have those. But I'll let Annie speak a little bit more to the plan, and then I know that she has some responses prepared to some of the questions that Robin had for us. Thank you.
As Jake mentioned, I'm Annie Richardson. I'm a development associate with Onyx and East, and I'm going to walk you through a little bit more about our site. As you can see on the screen, we are proposing that we'll rezone this site to MFPRD, and this was of a recommendation of the planning staff that a condominium association doesn't exactly meet the needs of an SFPRD. So despite the fact that these are all single family homes, we are seeking zoning as an MFPRD. And as you can see on the screen, there is quite a bit of residential around us and quite a bit of precedence, both for the SFPRD and the MFPRD, both to our north and to our south. And as you can see on the screen as well, we have 4 separate parcels that we'll be combining into one. And there's a couple unique features of this site that make it a little bit of a unique site plan in how we've designed it. Most notably, we have an entire floodplain and stream corridor protection zone that runs from the southwest portion of the site all the way diagonally to the northeast. And so that actually creates more 2 sub areas. We haven't defined them particularly as a sub area A or B, but the site plan itself lends to having 2 separate product types on the plan. In addition, we also have an existing home on the site that faces Lewis Center Road. And then also there is an existing home off-site, which I know one of the residents is here tonight, and that is not part of our plan. So that particular parcel has been carved out and is not part of our development. Lastly, as was mentioned before, Green Meadows Drive is planned to be extended up along through our site. And previously, before we had been involved in this site, there was a dedication of a right-of-way for the roundabout that exists today. And so there's ongoing conversations with Delaware County and negotiations for a contract to dedicate that right-of-way. And in addition, we also will be, the plan is to contain all of the stormwater management for that portion of Green Meadows Drive that we front in our development in our own basins. So there, we're working to finalize that, that contract with them as we speak. This is the site plan that was listed in the staff report and what we're proposing here. Of note, there are two separate product types that we are suggesting would be placed on this site. What you see along the perimeter is most notably in traditional single-family residential with a garage that fronts the street and then also a 20-foot driveway. The next product type is what we refer to as more of a rear load or alley loaded product. This type of home actually also has a 20-foot driveway, which allows us to park 2 cars in the driveway, but it also, the garage that's attached is fed via that alley. So this is a pretty unique product that you don't see everywhere, and especially in single-family residential neighborhoods, but it really creates more of an urban feel and is unique to Onyx and East and something that we strive to create in all of our neighborhoods. The other thing to note is that on the top left corner, as you can see, as I pointed out that existing home, we've also created what we're referring to as estate lots that front Lewis Center Drive, or Lewis Center Road, excuse me. And though we have one existing home and then what we've referred to as 3 separate estate lots, those are included in our density calculations as having one home on each lot. So that's how we have calculated it in the bottom left corner, as you can see. That takes us to a density of 3.98 units per acre overall throughout the site, which is under the 4 units per acre that is allowed through MFPRD. Go ahead. It's a little bit tough to read, I know, on here with all the lines, but the 2 big things to note on this plan are the open space requirements. As Robin pointed out earlier, we do have a 20% requirement via the MFPRD, but we are actually proposing roughly 30% of our total site would be open space, which is well above what is required. And then in addition, as I previously mentioned, we do have 20-foot driveways on all of our homes, which allows us to have both 2 cars in the garage and 2 cars in the driveway. And so that is well above what is required of us, which is 3 parking spaces per home. And then in addition to that, on top of it, we have 89 on-street parking spaces. So we far exceeded what is required, but to the benefit of both this community and the overall community as a whole, we've exceeded that calculation. Lastly, I would also like to point out on this plan that we have the clubhouse and the pool that were mentioned earlier as amenities to the residents, but also in what we're referring to as the Northwest Basin, we've created about a 1/4 mile walking path around that basin. And so that connects back into the clubhouse and is an amenity to the residents. This plan shows a little bit more about how we've configured our homes on the site. As I mentioned previously, we have both a front load home and then a rear load home. And on the front load home, you'll see that it's a pretty traditional yard space. Your side yards are split between units, and then the rear yard is dedicated solely to the unit that it's behind. And also, though we are providing a 20-foot driveway, we also have a 9-foot buffer between the sidewalk and the curb in order to ensure that no cars are being parked in front of the sidewalk so as to block it. On the rear loaded or alley loaded units, we actually have dedicated an entire side yard to one individual unit. So each side yard will be fenced off and dedicated solely to the unit that it is adjacent to. In the alleys, we don't have sidewalks, so there's not a necessity for an additional buffer, but we do have the 20-foot driveways that are serving those homes. The last thing I want to mention is that on our private streets, we do have a 26-foot width, And that is per the standard of both the fire department and our particular internal standard. And so that creates an 18-foot drive lane for residents to drive by. This is just a more detailed landscape plan that illustrates one of the entrances. This is actually the northernmost entrance to the site. And we are proposing that there are a few homes that face Green Meadows Drive. And so I know there were some questions about that buffering. And so this plan shows a little bit more about the vegetation that's proposed, but also the fact that we are proposing a fence, a low fence, to be parallel to the path, and then also creating gaps in that fence in order to provide access to the trail via our community. And this is a home, Jake previously mentioned that we were previously approved for a project in Berlin Township. And this is a rendering of what those rear or alley loaded homes look like. Though the architecture will likely be very different here on this particular project, it shows the quality of the homes and then also how that rear alley loaded product really creates an urban environment and very walkable and create some connection from neighbor to neighbor as well without a large driveway in the front of your home. Lastly, I'm just going to walk through our list of divergences quickly. Our first divergence is pretty self-explanatory and something that I've already gone over a little bit, but just allowing us to have single-family homes in a multifamily residential district. As we said, it is the condominium style project is not covered in SFPRD, and so this would allow us to create more of a flexibility of land development, and then also just of note that the increased urbanization and the growth of Orange Township really allows us to create this unique site and unique layout. The next one is it's more of a procedural divergence. This just allows us to have a rental or sales office within our clubhouse, and this is to the benefit of the community. We really would like to have a professional staff member on site at all times to be able to ensure the quality of maintenance, as well as to be a landing spot for any visitors or potential residents that might be visiting the community. Next is, as Robin had pointed out, an increased maximum density from 8 to 12. And this just really allows us to maximize our open space. As we previously stated, we have over 10% more open space than what is required. And so this allows us to do that. And we also have a limited amount of developable area due to the stream corridor protection zone and as well the floodplain. And so this allows us to create that more urban, dense community within the suburban environment. And then lastly, this is a divergence to minimize our building separation. This is pretty much for the same reasons that were stated previously, but also just of note that we do this minimum building separation is pretty standard for our build for rent communities. And so we know that this particular home layout works and that we're confident in our ability to rent these homes due to with this minimum building separation. And with that, we will wrap this up and ask for your support for our project and take any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'll open it up to the board for any questions regarding the development.
I'm listening.
You're listening?
Well, I'll tell you what, I think you've done a great job of covering all the bases. I'm impressed with all the details. I'd love to see what the renderings would look like for our neighborhood. That was really nice to be constructed. I think I'd also like you to address some of the concerns from Delaware County Planning and some of our staff with respect to, yes, we appreciate the 30 greater open space. That's also huge, but they have also commented that to increase the amenities for that much of an open space, that would That would be helpful, but again, I'd like to see the rental, see where it happens, where you're gonna do with the mail service and that, and how this clubhouse would be constructed. I'm not, is there any possibility for anybody to buy any of these, or will these always be rentals?
Do we address
Yeah,
each
yeah, we
person?
can-
Well, first of all, I also would love to distribute to you guys. We do have responses to all of the staff comments that were made. And so if you guys would like to review those,
Okay.
that would be.
Sure.
So we have responses to the staff report. So along with that, the typo and then the footages, we amend the zoning text, so that's also.
So I can help respond to some of your questions, sir. So we are in the process of working on renderings. They weren't to a place where we were sufficiently happy with them to present them to tonight, so we can bring them back at a subsequent meeting, and we can add, having rendering done, or at least elevations provided for that clubhouse building. We can also speak to the mail service where that's going to be placed. We don't have an exhibit prepared today, but we can provide that. On the question about can someone buy these, or are any of these going to be available for sale? So we will finance this project with a typical construction loan with investors that are having the expectation of that, at least through a lease up and stabilization period, that they would all be rentals. But that does not preclude us from being able to sell them in the future. That's why we're setting up the condominium structure the way that we are, rather than it being a single plat, as it gives us ultimate flexibility to, should it make financial sense to do so, be able to divest of onesie, twosie, or blocks of 20, or whatever that ends up looking like in the future.
And I'm not opposed to, especially for what you want to put here, to a permanent sales office. I understand the necessity, but again, the renderings for that, parking, those situations, because we always require no parking signs out front, so people, your guests and people interested aren't parking on someone's front of their house. So well, we would treat that as a standard sales office. So we would need to see those as well.
The other comment in regards to parking is we have planned for separate off-street parking for the clubhouse. So that is included in our plan right now, but we can create an exhibit that shares a little bit more information about it.
And because you want to do this as multifamily, and since they're only single homes, how do we do that? I mean, I understand that relates to the density, and it works with the density, yes it does, of course.
So that's why we requested a divergence to allow that single family home.
Single family.
My guess it would be like some of the upcons we've done that are
Yes.
zoned multifamily, but are really single family.
And I've seen products like what you're proposing here in other parts of the city, so it's common enough, alleys, and what you're proposing. Oh, that's all I have.
I just have a couple of brief things real quick.
Okay.
So the Green Meadows Road extension, when is that slated to happen, and how is that happening?
I'm not entirely clear on it, but I believe it's supposed to be finished in 2025 is my
Okay.
understanding from the county engineer. It's a county project,
Yeah.
so we as the township are somewhat involved because it is within our jurisdiction, but the county will be the one leading that project.
So if you guys are going in before then or developing before then, are you going to do some of that development and then like through a TIF or something or do you guys have a plan for that, those improvements? I mean, I know you guys said you're taking care of the stormwater off of that roadway.
Mhm.
So is there a plan for how that's going to happen?
It's our expectation, there's a couple components to this. It's our expectation that construction will actually start this winter on the road, and that clearing will begin. And we are working through a cost sharing agreement with the county to pay for our share of that road right now. And within that agreement provides for accommodations for us providing that stormwater for the road.
Okay. And then The second question has more to do with operations. So similar to a condominium community, I'm assuming through, well, you would be the management or hire a management company that would come through and maintain all of the lots and everything associated with that's outside of the house. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so, are there, for lack of a better term, is there like a limited common area that someone renting is able to do plantings or anything, or is it it's just completely restricted?
So each home will have a fenced in yard, whether it's a side yard or a backyard. Within that space, they are free to do it with not whatever they want. Obviously, there's limitations to that, but they're free to plant a garden if that's for example, if that's what they want to do.
And does that have to go through some type of review process?
No, I mean, if somebody says they're planting dope, that's a different thing. But no, there's no review process.
Okay. All right. Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, no, that's fine. So I actually, have a lot of the concerns that the staff report and that the county brought up. I do think, enhanced elevations along Green Meadows Drive would be nice, or some landscaping, all that, as opposed to like just a blank wall of a building. And also now it makes more sense that you have the alleyway and they face out, so that way the front along the main street is the enhanced elevation. And if the fire department is okay with basically 18-inch street width with signs on one side of do not park, if they're happy with that and they can get their equipment around, I'm good with that. I do think that, walking paths would be nice, or a dog park or whatever. I was trying to figure out, the whole condo lease rental thing, and is this age restricted, or, do you need playground equipment? Stuff like that I think should probably be addressed in terms of amenities. If this is age restricted, maybe a dog park. If it is open, maybe, a playground or something like that. So something like that to provide those amenities in addition to the clubhouse. I did want to note, and I didn't quite follow what you were talking about in terms of the driveways. For the driveways to count as parking, there needs to be 20 feet from the overhead door to the sidewalk. So as long as that is in your calculations, that's good. If not, you need to push those garages back so you can get the 20 feet in for your parking spot.
Just the last page, please.
Yeah, I think that's.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry, do you have more?
Yeah, just a few, but
Okay.
as long as you're aware of that,
Yeah.
it's something that sometimes developers forget, and then you have to remind them of when they're trying to put their site plans together. I did have a couple of other things. The 12 feet between the buildings basically means there's like 6 feet from your imaginary lot line between the buildings to the edge of your building. Adam can talk about more of it than I can, but there are life safety fire concerns with that, as long as you are aware of that. That close together brings about additional construction issues and expenses to keep the neighborhood safe. But the two big issues I have that I really sort of, I guess, want explaining on is, you want usually a sales office is a conditional use, but a leasing office is more of a permanent use. And so that's where I'm a little confused. Is it a leasing office? Is it a sales office? And part of it, I guess, is because you don't know how this community is going to develop, but I hate not knowing as a planner what's going to develop. So I'd rather have something more affirmed than, we're going to have a continuous sales office that's going to be in operation for 20 years. makes me nervous. That's why we normally have as a conditional. If it's apartment complex and it's a leasing / maintenance office, like, other complexes have, then it's of a different nature. So I'd like sort of, that to be solidified. The other thing that for me needs to be solidified is the 4, what you call estate lots in the north, I guess, west corner has me confused. Those are like 2 basically acre lots, 4 2-acre lots. You have 8, 9 acres up there. If they're going to be single-family homes, I would imagine you're actually going to sell them as single-family homes and not lease them. If that's the case, then that 8, 9 acres really isn't part of your multifamily complex. It is a separate development, and that's where I agree with the county. It's almost like, and excuse me, I'm sorry if I'm misconstruing your intentions, that you're adding that landscape in to increase your density down where your multifamily is, and renting that out, and then having your 2-acre lots above. And that can't be in one development. That's like 2 separate developments. There's not even a connection between the 2. Mm-hmm. So it's not like those people can use the clubhouse, or they'd even be able to if you're going to sell those. Technically, then they're not part of the condo or the complex. So for me, that's sort of the biggest thing that needs to be resolved. So either that is part of the development and developed like everything else in some fashion, or it's separate luxury, 2-acre lots with whatever their amenities are. Then they don't have access to the clubhouse because they don't right now. They don't have access to the walking trails or anything like that. But then also you don't get the density bonus, as it were, for those lots. I'm not sure if that came out. What was that?
No, makes sense.
Okay, so that, so just sort of, right now it's like you want both. I was like, it's one or the other. I don't know how, because part of it's single family and part of it's multifamily. And it just doesn't, it's like you have 2 separate developments and not one cohesive development. And yeah, that is for me one of the biggest sticking points of how all that is supposed to work with those lots up there. Mm-hmm. I think that's
Yeah, no, that's good.
That's
excellent,
enough.
Excellent point. No. Yeah, I mean, overall, I like your project. Its layout, its design, comments that we've heard so far, and certainly looking forward to seeing the renderings and other information that comes from it. The leasing office, is that going to be just based right there in the clubhouse area? Is that the point? And then, is there commitment for X number of years that you will manage it, or that it will remain as like rental property versus similar? I was a little challenged by the thought of at some point you decide you might want to sell. You gotta might sell 2 units, then sell 20 units and that kind of stuff. You got many different management companies, kind of, or potential owners, I guess, and there. Is there commitment for the thought of it always being a single management company? That's a question.
Okay, yeah, I can easily answer that. Yeah. So the reason, again, why we set up the condominium structure, that it creates bylaws and maintenance requirements for each of these parcels, regardless of whether it's owner occupied or whether it's renter occupied. So the way that I see that is that this is a condo community where there's half of them are for sale or half of them are for rent. There'll be a single management company that maintains the lots, and so that from anybody from the outside looking in, you'll see no difference in the maintenance and upkeep of the homes for those specific reasons. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yeah, I think so. So just you're not planting a flag one way or the other. I mean, if the market says, hey, these are better to sell, you're going to move with the selling storage. It's better to. I just wish there was some sort of. I mean, I understand why you're doing it,
right?
But the thought is, if there's some sort of commitment that says, for X number of years or whatever, this is where we're going to plant our flag because we believe this product serves this community for X reason.
Yeah.
And get married to that for a certain period of time would be nice.
I can speak to that a little bit. I think, and especially for the folks that are in the building industry right now, everybody knows that this is kind of somewhat of uncertain times. And so what we wouldn't want to do is limit the ability to finance the project by stating that a project has to be one specific use owner occupied or not. And so I don't think we'd be willing to commit to that, but at least I can unequivocally tell you that we're at this point anticipating that this is at least a 5-year rental community. But that's just our kind of business plan at this point.
And as far as the rent up, is that we finish a phase and rent that up and then go to the next phase? That kind of a
yes,
plan?
It'll be a rolling thing.
Yeah.
You know, as we deliver a home, hopefully somebody's ready to accept the keys that day, and we don't carry it. But yeah, so it'll be just as we finish the home, it'll be available for lease.
And then I think, and I believe this was a staff comment along Green Meadows of some sort of fence or something to put there. Any thoughts on that or consider it? Yeah.
So we will plan to not only place some vegetation in that space, but also some sort of low fence. We've not defined the materiality or the specific height of that, but something to provide separation from someone's front yard and the common area or the public right of way that's there.
Yeah, that's all the questions.
Sure. And I'd like to respond to some of your questions, if I may. So this is not age restrictive. That was one of the questions. And I think your suggestion of some additional amenities is worth considering. We can look into that beyond the walking trail that we already mentioned. And both of you asked about the clubhouse or the leasing office or the sales office, however it's defined. We can provide some stipulations within our PRD text that states that if it is a sales office, that it would be limited to be there for until X period of time, or if it's a leasing office, that it could remain in perpetuity as long as the property operates as a rental community. The office is literally just this. It's an office within that clubhouse, so that they are within one building, and that office could easily convert to some sort of shared common area amenity if for some reason that we don't need that leasing office in the future. On the 4 estate lots, we fully expected that there would be questions on how these all work. To be clear, those 4 estate lots would not be a part of the HOA of the 158 homes that are on the south side of the creek. We looked at, quite frankly, the maximum density that was allowed on this 40.664 acres at 162 homes. And we thought, rather than leave that entire frontage blank, let's provide some sort of continuity of development pattern with some single family homes that would be along that road. Again, of a lot size that is actually pretty common, or it's very close to what is there today in terms of lot width. And so we feel like it's a responsible way to respond to how to treat that listener frontage in a way that doesn't, frankly, create undue cost for us to create a bridge and a road to cross that creek and all that, which didn't really seem to add much value to the overall community. So I don't necessarily have a suggestion how we structure this within the text, but we can delineate that those 4 are not a part of the HOA if that would satisfy some concerns, or at least clear things up. Maybe it's not satisfying concerns.
I would almost talk to Robin and the county to see what. It's just like I said, that would be, in my mind, a single-family product and a single-family development, and then what's left. So it's almost like you'd have to combine the lots and then split them again, which I know would probably be, all sorts of legalese that nobody really wants to get involved with. But I don't know what the county or the township would require, but it just, from my perspective, those would be a single-family development, and, you can work with the county of like how many driveways they'll let you have along Lewis Center Road, and figure out how you want to configure those 4 estate homes with driveways and all that fun stuff and setbacks. But then the remainder of the property would be what is your multifamily development that would have like your HOA,
Sure.
your condo association that could then potentially be leased or sold, however you want. And that's, you know, where you would have your 4 units per acre density and your walking trails and your amenity space and stuff like that. So for me, it's almost like 2 separate developments.
Yeah, the way that I see this is that we're proposing a master plan
Okay.
for these 40.664 acres. It's obviously heavily weighted towards one side of the creek than the other, but we can, within the text, maybe define sub areas, as Andy kind of alluded to, that says that sub area A would be X use, sub area B would be X use, and so they're all contemplated within the text, but they're clearly defined from each other. Does that seem?
Work with Robin and the county on how to get it to, but that was just my big issue, is like, it doesn't, I'm not sure it's gonna fly.
Yeah. And then maybe you had a couple of other points that I just wanted to talk on. So we are clear on the requirement for the depth of the driveway to be clear of sidewalks. We're already accommodating that. And I'm thankful that Andy here is an architect by trade and understands fire safety requirements for building separation. So that's not a concern of ours.
Okay. And that's it. Like the others, you know, the elevations were nice. We'd like, you know, you to proceed in that direction, especially not only for the buildings, but, you know, the public faces that you would see along Green Meadows Drive, as if someone was driving down there or walking down there. And then around the clubhouse, and presumably you're going to have like a mail kiosk or parking, and how all that is going to work. We want signage, all that fun stuff. But Robin can help you with the next phase requirements.
Sure. Thank you.
One additional question. Did you, or let me play a couple questions, and maybe it's written here somewhere, but how many of these are 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, 4 bedroom? What's the breakout?
So they're all 3 and 4 bedrooms. Off the top of my head, I don't know that I could define how many are split.
Okay.
Maybe like 30% would be 3 bedrooms and 70% would be 4 bedrooms.
Okay, all right, so 4 bedrooms. And what's the price point you're focused on, or you think if they were all up to date, what kind of story would you have?
So I can say generally that those would be in the high 2000s for rents, and you just have to kind of compare what a mortgage cost would be, and it's somewhat of a similar cost to that.
Okay.
Do you guys have, so I assume in other communities, and maybe this one's planning to do the same or not, but is there maybe, you know, several different designs for each house that, you know, maybe let's just call it 10 different designs? Do you guys follow, or do you have any standards, since this is going to be developed a little bit differently than single family? Is there a diversity diagram or something you can provide that says, you know, we won't be putting the same house within, you know, this many from next to each other or anything like that?
Yeah, so on our previous project that we recently went through zoning in Berlin Township, the way that we handled it was we provided a variety of different elevation styles between units, and then also a set number. I think in Berlin we did 6 color palettes that are then applied over those different elevations to create diversity across the board. So we did create a key plan that shows the elevation and then the color palette that goes along with it, just to ensure there's no monotony. It's kind of like an anti-monotony plan, if you were to say so.
That'd be great if you guys could provide something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
With the elevations, and then
Exactly.
I think it was said that the clubhouse too, I think if there's elevations or even a rendering or something for that, it would be nice to see it.
Yeah, and that was what we'd be looking for in those elevations, like you said. So there's no monotony.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Same house over and over.
Okay, so any other comments from the board before we go to public comment? No? All right, so at this time, we'll open it up to public comment. If you wish to speak tonight, again, I'll just reiterate, please state your name and address. For the sake of everybody's time, please try to limit your comments to 3 minutes or less, and try to avoid redundancy. So if there's a comment made about traffic or something like that, try not to make the same comment, just so, you know, it's been heard by the board, and we'll have an answer between the applicant or whoever you're wishing to respond. So at this time, we'll open it up to the public. Is there anybody that wishes to speak tonight?
Me.
Yes, sir.
But I got more questions than 3 minutes will probably allow, if that's okay. If not, I'll sit down and try again.
Well, we can try. Name and address, please.
Doug Wenzel, 620 Lewis Center Road.
Thank you.
We're right on the west side. These are all going to be 2-story? All right. Okay. I think you mentioned that. Is it regional planning, or the county engineer's office said that you can't approve those 4 lots? Or you can't go with the project until those 4 lots are approved through that?
We'll have to plat those lots as a part of the process, but
Okay.
the development of those lots does not preclude the development of the other 158.
Okay, so the development of those 4 can't go on until you get approval. That makes sense. So the plan is 4 curb cuts?
That has not been finalized with the engineer's office. We've talked about 1 curb cut, 4 curb cuts. That'll be a part of the final engineering plans.
Okay. As the township zoning book says that Lewis Center Road is a Class B road, but that is a whole code. Has that ever been changed from Class B?
No.
No? Okay, so it's still a 70-foot step back from the right of way.
Yes.
Okay. And the 6 foot to the lot line, I can't remember. Is that where you need an hour separation between units? Or is that, what's the cutoff in Ohio building code for hour separation between units? Is it less than 60? So right at 60, does that count overhang?
So,
You're fine.
So typically it's 5 feet, which I assume are you architects as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's 5 foot to the lot line,
To the
10
lot.
foot
Yeah.
between 2 structures.
Yeah.
So if the eave or say a overhang encroaches on that 10 feet, the eave would need to be rated. Anything within that 10-foot separation.
And do these have overhangs and fly rack?
They do.
Yeah.
Okay. 8 inches, 10 inches, 12 inches?
That hasn't been determined yet.
Okay. Okay.
that's the nature of the comment earlier.
Yeah.
I probably have my 3 minutes. Am I okay?
You're good. You can keep going.
And the sewer connection comes from
Southeast.
southeast. Okay, from Kruger's property, back where the apartments are now. Okay. You've got floodway, 100-year floodway, and then the stream protection zone. That's all. Okay.
And that means y'all are responsible for any EPA, Ohio, whatever permitting along the.
Yep.
Yeah, I
And
see
so-
you are aware of that.
Yep.
So the 4 proposed lots on Lewis Center Road, they go clear back to the floodway, the flood zone,
That's how they're drawn today.
to the floodway.
They're basically shown to the creek today.
Okay. It's hard to tell looking at this TV.
Yeah, right.
Looks like they're shy of the creek, which would be the floodway, I suppose.
But just to note, it is just the rear part of the lot that's in the flood zone. It's just the rear part.
Yeah. And you've worked with the fire department. Did you say that I can't remember the road? It's Green Meadows Road. That's going to start this fall, you think, Mike?
I think the plan is that clearing would begin around January.
Okay.
Timing after that one.
Okay. And what kind of street does the fire department require for construction to start?
I did not know the answer to that question.
Okay.
but I know they're pretty particular, make sure they don't get their tax. Okay.
And I can maybe clarify, I think you're referring to like Prairie Building before that road is in, them starting construction on homes. I don't think that's your intent, correct? Is that what you're referring to?
Well,
You're asking what kind of access the fire department would need
Yeah,
if they were to start building before streets are in.
Or even, yeah, because their streets too. What kind of street do you?
We build to a like county standard with our private streets.
Okay.
And we'll work with the county to come up with whatever means of ingress egress we need for emergency services to get into the property during construction. That may come via the Green Meadows portion that's actually built today, or that may come from Green Meadows as extended, depending on the status of that road when we start construction.
For your own construction, do you use that quick set dry concrete as the first layer?
It's an option we use, but we don't have a hard and fast rule on it.
Okay. This little tiny picture is hard to see out.
Yeah.
There, so. Well, I think that might get me.
Good?
I believe so.
All right. Did you say your name was Don? Is that
Doug.
Doug. All right.
Doug.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate it. Any other public comments?
Hello.
Yes, sir.
My name is Nick McCoy. I live on Franklin Street, right across the street from that proposed thing. Probably a little bit of a get off my lawn thing. I'm an attorney as well, but not that that means anything to this. I moved here a little over 19 years ago, and this place, Orth Township, had a rural feel to it. It's really lost that luster over the 19 years I've been here, especially in the past few years on things that have been approved, whether it be by you guys or your predecessors. 3 times in Mrs. I don't know what your name is, but your speech there, you talked about creating an urban feel, increased urbanization of Orange Township, and creating an urban dense community in a suburban environment. I didn't move here 19 years ago to live in a city. I fully didn't expect places that have farm names to not be farms anymore. Evans Farm in particular, North Farms. And placing a farm-like structure on a piece of property doesn't make it rural. And case in point is the thing across Lewis Center Road from us in old Lewis Center Village now, where we have the white barn-like building that's not a barn. I find it amusing, to me anyways. It's called cluster housing. This high density, I treat it as high density, maybe not the legal definition of high density, but I treat this as high density housing. From a developer standpoint, it's how much money can I make off per foot? From somebody who's lived here and wants to keep this area in Orange Township as a rural feel, understanding that growth can't be stopped, understanding that those things occur. That's high density to me. 158 units, 3 to 4 bedrooms, 12 feet between structures. I can urinate 12 feet. Well, at least I could 20 years ago. It's not, I'm amused by the fact that it's called cluster housing, because to me it's a cluster. And I don't know what, I guess my overall point here is I'm not sure what Orange Township's plan is. Because it's Evans Farm, it's this development, it's what is that, Orange Communities down in the Kerbler area with the high density housing. What is the overall plan? Because switching from a farm residential, which I understand that's not a farm, it's not being used to grow crops, but switching it from that right past single family housing to putting structures 12 feet apart doesn't help keep that rural feel. And It's not the Orange Township I moved into. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bud Abraham from Stormhaven Court here in Lewis Center. I've just got a couple of kind of observations from the northernmost entrance from the traffic circle. Is there any kind of deceleration lane requirement? Because that is awfully close from the traffic circle, and then just knowing from driving these pretty much every day, once you hit the end of that traffic circle, you're going to be hitting the gas or accelerating back up the speed. That northernmost entrance is pretty close to the traffic circle. And if Green Meadows is just a 2-lane road, we're going to have a lot of problems, especially if there's, let's say, 2 cars per home. You're about, or 2.5, you're at about 400 vehicles in the development. And then just as another comment that everybody else has mentioned, there's just a lack of, there is that kind of median area there that has the trees and some area there, and then the walking path, but it just doesn't seem to have a lot of recreation or just kind of park feel to it. And then access over to the other side of the street across the where the other gentleman lives, but just getting over to where the walking trail or the multi-use trail that runs parallel to the railroad tracks here, there just doesn't have any kind of connectivity to that. So that would be my only comments here.
Okay, thank you.
Just thinking, this comment about traffic circle. Since I live by it, he lives by it, it is a raceway. They didn't put much curve into coming into that because weekends, nighttime, motorcycles and hot rods taking off of the North Road. They come into the traffic circle and they go as fast as they can. Posts, everything. It's just.
Hi. Katie and Keith Cabot, we're at 959 Lewis Center Road, so directly across from where the proposed property is. Agree with all the sentiments that everyone here has mentioned. I think we do feel that the concept of this property makes sense. The location is a terrible idea. There's currently no rentals from the roundabout towards 23. Those are all single-family residences and homes, such as ours, that are either have been around since the 60s and are on a few acres of the land that we also have been there for 21 years and have enjoyed. The neighborhood that is behind us, the Weeping Rock areas, things have been developed, but they're single-family homes. One of my concerns that has not been addressed, I'm assuming based on 3 to 4 bedrooms, you're targeting families. So I'd like to know what the data is regarding the impact on the school system. The current system or school that this would feed into is overcapacity, Heritage Elementary. I don't know about the middle school and high school that are there, but I do know, in fact, that Heritage is overcapacity today. So what does that impact? I think you also had things you wanted to add.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it, it sounds like a great concept. I think it's the wrong spot. I don't know how we can even start to, like you touched on, you got these 4 lots. Oh, maybe this, maybe that. It all starts out, well, we'll zone it that, we'll just see what happens. That doesn't. The other thing is, we've got more rentals here. And to me, the rentals and stuff, condos, apartments, whatever, we're typically more towards like commercial or located around that. So now we've got the Evans Farm in, and they're going to have commercial, so now they've got apartments, okay, all this. So I don't see why this isn't just like, maybe this could be like moved back. This would be more suitable for like the property where like Keebler Farms owns. Back there where there's already like apartments and condos. You wouldn't have to deal with these 4 lots. You could have this density that they want. All this, you got your traffic concerns. Is that the plan? Is just to make apartments, rentals on that's what Lewis Center is, downtown Lewis Center. That's just going to become that. I disagree. I think there's better places for this. I agree with what they're trying to do. It's a great idea, but I think it's the wrong spot. I think that all this stuff has to be figured out beforehand. But we'll go ahead and change it, well, we'll see. We'll make provisions for that. That's what I would like to see. I would like to see it.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
I'm Mike Hyde. I live at 6476 Daybreak Drive, Epcot at the Ravines. So, a couple comments. I do appreciate having smaller lots and homes, as I just moved into the Epcot at the Ravines, and I can understand how some people that have the larger properties would want there to be larger properties or big single-family homes. So I appreciate that, but I do think there are too many rentals being built with everything up front at Evans Farm. The other complex of 3 pillars, I believe those are all rentals as well. So this would make a majority of the new homes built along Lewis Center rentals versus ownership. So I have some concern about that. Also, to your comment, as far as using those 4 lots, is that one asking for 12 units per acre versus 8 units per acre? Is that including lot? You're saying that's including those 4 huge lots up top. So if you remove those, you would be asking for, what, 15, 20 units per acre if you remove those 4 lots. Is that kind of what you were getting at in your comment?
What I was trying to get at is like the overall development is 40 acres, give or take 40.4, whatever like that. And then 8 to 9 of those acres are actually those single family estate homes or whatever you want to call them. So that technically the density for the multifamily should be the 40.4, 40 whatever, minus the 9 acres for those single family. And then that acreage, which would be like 32 or something like that, is what you should base your 4 units per acre on, which would then give you 120, 130 some odd. I'm not doing the math right now, but you get the idea. So that's what I was going. Don't get any of the amenities for the density bonus. So I'm
Agreed.
sort of like saying that, you know, it's I know life's not fair, but they contribute to the density bonus, but they don't get the amenities from the density bonus, is what I'm trying to say. So that's why, for me, if there's no connectivity, no relationship, they should be separate.
So to further clarify on that, there's 2 separate codes here. There's one that is the overall density of the development, which allowable under what they're submitting is 4 units per acre. They're at 3.9 something, so they're under that. They're under the, I may be off, but they're under the regulations, so they're not asking for a divergence there.
And that's for multifamily.
Yeah, for multifamily.
I thought they were asking for 8 dwellings from 8 to 12. They're asking for an increase of 4 units per.
So that's the second part of the density. There's a second code that says that you can have 8 units per acre. So that's aside from the overall 4 units for the entire development.
On any one acre.
On
any
any
physical acre.
Yes.
It's not, you're not including those four lots up there. It's in one physical acre.
Yeah.
One
So
physical
it's
acre.
like one physical acre, all clustered
Okay.
together. If you like do a little square and you count how many units,
Okay.
technically you're not supposed to have more than 8.
Well, that
but
answers one of it,
depending
but I
upon
still
how you-
concerned with what she was
How you
saying.
move that square around, it could be more than 8, it could be less than 8. It's
But they are asking for a divergence on that.
Yeah.
They are over that. What they're under, and what Christine is referring to, is if you took those 9 acres, whatever, out, that would bump them over the 4, which then would require another divergence. That's what Christine's referring to.
Well, yeah, that's definitely a concern. There is concern about the schools, for sure. I know a lot of the other apartments they're putting in, the ones they just built across the street, are 1 and 2 bedroom. So I talked to somebody involved with that development, and the thoughts were there wouldn't be a lot of kids coming into the school district because they're smaller 1, 2 bedrooms. Even the rentals at Evans Farm are 1, 2 bedrooms versus 4 bedrooms. There'd be a significant amount of those being new kids coming into the school systems, and having somebody in that school right across the street. That's definitely a concern. And also traffic. I don't know if there's bigger plans that you can share on Lewis Center Road. I know they put in the roundabout a few years ago, but I know there's talk about, the overpass over the trains. I think at one point there was going to be something that went over the train tracks and widening of Lewis Center Road. Will any of this development be contingent upon, having an infrastructure to support, like you said, 400 new cars, just popping up, going through that roundabout?
Yeah, I mean, and I'll let them speak to this after all public comment, but they have conducted a traffic study that shows the trip counts of this development, and whether it's preliminary or not, but it has that information in there. And that's something they shared with us.
Okay.
And to your point, you know, how these things work is as development continues and cities grow and things like that, or townships become cities, and you know, as there's more development, then that's where, you know, improvements are made to the roadway. So like obviously they're not going to do anything to Lewis Center Road unless there's something that warrants that, which is usually going to be shown in the, you know, whether the traffic study says, well, we probably need to add a light here, or, you know, we need to widen this road, we need to have another lane. That's generally what the information that's going to come out of those type of studies. So I don't know. I mean, I think
I'm assuming those studies happened. I'm sorry, this is the first one.
Oh, yeah.
Of these meetings before you approved, you know, the Evans Farm, before you approved that other.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The Cove. I don't know if the Cove at Evans Farm. I know originally that Cove at Evans Farm that they built was going to be something completely different than it is being built right now. So each time, but nothing's going to happen with improving the roads until people actually move into those units and the traffic comes.
I can't speak back to the beginning of Evans Farm. I wasn't around then, but I would say that yes, that those studies were submitted at the time of that development, just like any development. Now primarily this is something that the county reviews and then gives us input on. We get the reports and we look at them, but you know, we're not the professionals that you know, we're not actually, we don't have any say over the traffic study. They're the ones that are going to say, you need to put in a turn lane, you need to put in a decel lane, you need to put this in. The zoning board does not have that authority.
Or you don't consider that when approving?
Oh, we absolutely do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if the county's saying that it needs to go in, then it has to go in. We're not gonna. We don't waver on that.
You wouldn't consider it even before the county told you. Like, wouldn't you consider saying, well, this is gonna affect this area significantly. We need to.
Yeah,
have
absolutely.
Some foresight.
We can advise, but the final say is the county engineer.
Okay.
You know, so we can say, look, you know, based on the traffic study that's in here, they say most of the people are going south on Green Meadows and a certain percentage will go on north. So maybe we need a turn lane or something like that. And their planners would also be aware of that from the traffic study. But in the end, in terms of curb cuts, traffic studies, whether you need a turn lane or acceleration or deceleration lane, all that stuff lies with the county engineer that does the transportation network.
Because Green Meadows Drive hasn't been built.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know.
And so I'm already assuming that Delaware County Engineering's already taken a look at that and knows what that traffic is already there, knows what the traffic will be because they have the number of homes just as you've already seen. Yeah. So I'm already assuming they will do the right thing for Green Meadows and that gets built.
You've heard what they're talking about assuming before.
but I have no concern.
I don't assume anything, but you know.
I'll let them dictate everything. They put a curb cut in on an alley.
I didn't mean to be, but you know what I mean.
But we have no control over that.
Okay, okay. No control is not, but I mean, I think they value your opinion on whether you approve of something moving forward or not.
Yeah,
and just assuming the right thing is going to happen.
Right, and that's why there's dedicated right-of-ways and things. So, you know, a street may only need to be 2 lanes until we don't know what's going to happen over here. All this farmland, once that gets developed, then that right-of-way gets absorbed and turns into more lanes and things like that. That's how that whole process works.
And on the school, can you tell me how does that, like, what kind of property taxes would be going towards the school? How is that built into the plan? Because I know sometimes when you have rentals, they're not generating the kind of taxes that they need to go into the schools versus if they're selling them single families. Because if they're going to be sending another 400 kids plus into the school system, I mean, how is that going to be supported with tax dollars?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. They may be able to speak to it better than us. I would say that, you know, I know that.
So, I mean, they're still paying taxes. They're not paying taxes as a single-family homeowner on your property tax assessment, you know, and whatever mills you pay that goes towards the school. But they would be creating as a rental complex, the ownership and the management of that rental complex would be paying taxes probably at a corporate rate or a commercial rate as opposed to a residential rate. So they still have to pay their share in taxes. The one thing with apartments, generally speaking, from a planning perspective, is that the children that live in those apartments are usually younger, daycare, maybe kindergarten, preschool, you know, the younger ages. So they don't generate perhaps as much strain on the school as some people might think because of their younger kids, or maybe it's a teenager between downsizing or something.
Yeah, I have a
like
teenager
that.
and I'm living in Epcot. So
What was
yeah,
that?
so I have a teenager that's in high school and I'm living in Epcot.
Yeah, so you know what I'm talking
but I'm paying
about.
property tax because on it. So
Exactly.
versus rentals, is it based on just? Yeah, how would that be? I'm sorry, I don't know enough about it before I ask my question. I should have done some research. But how is that based? Is it based on how many structures that you'd be paying into the taxes, and just the lot size, or how does that work?
So property taxes generally work like this, as I understand them. So we are both somebody that lives here, and you are in the same tax district. So the same millage rate applies to both of us, except for the fact that because ours is not owner occupied, you actually pay less in taxes than our folks will because they're rental occupied. So from a pure millage rate standpoint, ours will pay a greater share. Now,
based on what they pay in rent, you're saying that
based upon, and so this is the other component of it. So there's millage rate and there's assessed value. And so what should happen is that the value of a structure should be assessed the same way, whether it's for sale or for rent. It's the value of those improvements that have been constructed. So there really should be no difference in value or assessed value for these homes of whether they're owner occupied or for sale or for rent, excuse me. And so we would be contributing the same into the schools as anybody else that has an owner occupied.
Now, I would think, with the four bedrooms, there would be more students going to school versus the ones that are right across the street with 2 and 3 bedrooms.
Yeah.
So,
I would.
that would probably be their hope, is to bring more families into the area. That's why they're building 4 bedrooms. That's all I got for now.
All right, thank you. Any other public comment tonight before we close? Okay, so at this time we'll close for public comment. We'll let the applicant respond to, I think you were responding as we went, but if there's anything additional you wanted to add, maybe some questions, traffic or anything that you wanted to touch on.
Yeah, so we follow the same traffic process as any developer does, working with the county engineer's office. And so Kevin Kirshner behind us with Kimberly Horn and his team have been working through that. So any sort of requirements, any needs, especially if there's specific offsite improvements that would need to be made, we would have to do those if that traffic study warranted, as you mentioned, Adam. I think there are concerns about generally the placement of density, and I think I'll put the rental piece of this aside, but just placement of density. I think being across from Old Lewis Center Village, adjacent to Evans Farm, this is the type of place where I think density is maybe most appropriate within Orange Township, except for some more commercial corridors. We think this is an appropriate transition of density from single family to multifamily to the south and then to the northeast. So we really feel like this is, while accommodating growth, accommodating population changes definitely hurts and is felt hard, especially for somebody that's lived here for 19 years. I can, as a person to person, I can totally understand this gentleman's perspective and others. But the reality is that Central Ohio is growing and more housing is needed. And we feel like this is a product type that's, it's not apartments, it's not creating density in a way that creates 3 stories of scale or things like that, or seas of parking lots or whatever it is. It's really an appropriate way to handle density as we see it. And then the last thing, the question about kids, obviously this is kind of, these are projections based upon data we've seen in other communities, but we would assume about 1 kid per house on average. But what I would speak to this is, and this really kind of speaks to some of the types of renters that we might have, is that you are looking at primarily people that are, this is a graduation option from them from a traditional apartment before they buy a single family home. So they might be coming to us for a year or 2, but eventually will be in Olentangy schools. And so, or they are somebody that just had a kid or their second kid, and they got to get out of that apartment or whatever it is. And so they need a house. So to the point about, these are daycare ages, that's a very valid point. And then it's also just empty nesters as well that are seeking a more carefree lifestyle without having to maintain a yard. So we think there certainly will be kids in here, but not the same as you might see in a large builder owner occupied single family neighborhood. I think beyond that, I think some of the other lot of the comments were consistent, and if the commission has any wishes us to speak to any of the other ones, I'm happy to do so.
All right, thank you. Is there anything additional from the board? Any other comments? All right, so obviously there's some work here that needs done. We're, going to have to continue the hearing. Is there, I guess, from an architecture, I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm assuming that the renderings, the elevations, things like that are probably going to be the most time consuming. What is the realistic time frame that you guys think it would take to get those done?
So when's the next? You have a November hearing, correct?
Correct. So there's one hearing in November, so 2 hearings left for the rest of the year. So November 15th and then December 6th.
So we would request the November hearing with the intent that the renderings are in process, so I don't think it's going to be a problem about getting them done. So as long as you have capacity on the agenda, we'll be ready. And as long as we feel like we can work with Robin on the other kind of textual things, but I feel like that should be fairly easy to accomplish.
Yeah, and I would ask that any new submittals be submitted at least 1 week before the hearing so that the commission and all of us have a chance to review adequately.
We're fine with that.
Is November 15th? November 15th? Is that right?
Yes.
Does that work for everybody? All right. Can I get a motion to continue zoning application ZON-22-10 Black Opal Properties LLC to the November 15th meeting at 6:30 p.m. at Orange Township?
Mr. Powitz?
Yes.
Mr. McNulty?
Yes.
Ms. Trevellis?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have three meeting minutes to approve. Has everybody reviewed them if you were present? Or?
I'm good.
I'll just go down the list. All right, is there any comments to the September 8th, 2022 zoning application 22-09 Aurora Farms?
No comments.
No comments. So I would say I move to approve the meeting minutes from September 8th, 2022 for Aurora Farms, ZON-22-09.
Mr. Powitz?
Yes.
Mr. McNulty?
Yes.
Ms. Trevellis?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Next up, September 13th, 2022 zoning 22-06 tidal wave auto spa meeting minutes. Any comments?
I was absent.
No comments.
Okay, can I get a recommendation of approval for the September 13th, 2022 tidal wave auto spa meeting minutes?
So moved.
Mr. Powitz?
Yes.
Mr. McNulty?
Yes.
Ms. Trevellis?
Can I say yes?
Yep.
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Before I never would.
Okay, final, October 11th, 2022 zoning application 22-09 Aurora Farms meeting minutes. Any comments to those?
No comment.
No.
All right, can I get a motion to approve the October 11th, 2022 zoning minutes for Aurora Farms?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Powitz?
Yes.
Mr. McNulty?
Yes.
Ms. Trevellis?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Yeah.
Hey,
All right.
anything else that we have?
I guess one note in terms of staffing. So it has not been approved by the trustees yet, but as of this morning, Mr. Brett has accepted the role of senior zoning officer, replacing Jeff Beard. So give him a pat on the back, and we will.
Well deserved.
We will be looking to hire somebody to fulfill Brett's current role in the coming months.
Very
All right.
good. Congratulations.
Sounds good. All right, well, with that, meeting adjourned.